Panther state championship team, we have Axel Hasto, who played center and linebacker for the Panthers back in 1960. Axel, I appreciate the time. How are you doing?
Well, very good, and I hope you folks are doing well as well.
We are doing great. We're doing great today, and I have to extend this greeting from Brandon Reed that worked at Cobble Creek Golf Course. He said he had the chance, the pleasure to talk with you many, many times when you were golfing at Cobble Creek, and he wanted to tell you hi this morning from Montrose.
Well, hello, Brandon.
Well, sounds like he's doing well. So I wanted to extend that to you because he had texted that in today to mention that he had enjoyed the chance to talk with you so many times at Cobble Creek. Now let's go back to that season where I think we might have said it was the 1A state championship as a 2A title when your team was able to win the 1960 state championship. You played center and linebacker on that team. And let's go back to the year before that, though, because the year before kind of set the stage, didn't it, Axel? You guys went 10-1, and you're certainly a team capable of winning a state title. And I think you might have mentioned that you thought that team might have even had more talent than the 1960 team. But that kind of set the stage for what you guys did in 1960.
Well, it certainly did, and that team before we had all senior backs, and so it had quite a lot of speed. But I tell you, the 60 team that won it all, we had a new backfield. We did have five of us linemen that came back the year before, but our backs were very inexperienced to start the season. Really put it together because that was our main thing: was rushing the ball control, ground and pound, and play defense.
Tell us about some of those backs that you guys had. Some of those guys that you were up there on the center, you're on the line leading the way for those guys. Who are some of the star backs that you had in 1960 for that Panthers team?
Well, Roger Gaston, who was our quarterback, and Roger the year before was a defensive back, and then the quarterback graduated. Roger took over, and we ran the option play a lot, and he was just excellent. He was also our place kicker. We didn't pass much, but when we had to, he was very effective, and Roger was just a real outstanding player. We had Brian Harder, who was a junior on the 60 team. Bobby Shalappy was a sophomore who came on at the end. And Eddie Ball was a senior and the first-year starter, and Eddie just did a tremendous job. So I guess what I'm saying is that 60 team had a backfield that was, like I said, inexperienced, but they really put it together. At the end of the season, in the state championship game, I looked back at the old records, and we rushed for 325 yards in the state finals. So credit to those guys, and then certainly the linemen were the key because it was a ground and pound offense.
Now, we're going to get to that line, which you were a part of for that 1960 championship. Axel Hasto with the 1960 2A state champion Delta Panthers with us, beat Canyon City 12-7 to win the title back in 1960. You were the center on that line. You mentioned all those backs. Let's talk about some of your line mates because you guys were the ones that did the dirty work up front, Axel.
Right. We had Jim Parks, who was an All-Stater as a junior. I was fortunate enough to be an All-Stater as a junior and a senior, as well as Parks. Gerald Gilder, who I played with in college. He was a big tackler. He was the biggest guy on our team, about 195. Our line probably averaged, back in those days, probably 175, which was considered, fairly good size for those days. We didn't have any weight rooms back then, 60 years ago, but I think we had a lot of strong farm boys. Wilbur Fix was an outstanding guard, a 3-year starter. Jerry Schindel was also a big part of that line, and Jerry was 185 pounds. And I think that's about it. I hope I'm not missing somebody.
Well, that's a lot of names to remember and go through, so I don't think anybody should feel too left out. And you did a great job remembering those folks. Axel Hasto with the 1962 A state champion Delta Panthers football team with us. We talked about the offense. You guys were ground and pound, had that backfield that was so successful, that line that opened those holes. But what about on the defensive side, Axel? What did that defense look like back in 1960 that obviously helped you guys win a 2A state title?
Well, that was our key to our whole team, was our defense, and our coach, who was just a tremendous coach, came to Delta, turned around a program that hadn't done well and had about 4 really successful seasons, went on to coach at CU, but he was his main thing was defense, because if they can't score, the least you can do is die. You won't get beat. So he pounded that into our heads. We basically ran a 4-man front with 4 backers, and I think that was a key. I just look back and at the old records, we averaged 23 points a game. We gave up only 7. We had 4 shutouts that year. And in the state final, Canyon City, we held them to less than 100 yards of total offense. They did score once on a flea flicker surprise play, and that was their only score. But I think the thing is why we were successful is, again, we played good defense, 3 and out, get the ball, 3-4 yards of whack, pass it once in a while, and just control the ball and run the clock.
We're talking to a member of the 1960 Delta Panthers 2A state championship team, Axel Hasto, played center and linebacker on that team, joining us on the program today. The coach you were referring to, Don Stymack, who you mentioned he went on to CU. Coach Stymack was obviously the architect of all the success that you guys had, particularly at that 1960 state championship season. I want to ask you, Axel, about a game or two that really, when you think back to that season, maybe a play, maybe a game, moment that really kind of sticks in your mind all these years later. What are a couple of those memories for you?
Well, I think we did go unbeaten, 11-0, and back in those days it was basically the Western Slope champ versus the Eastern Slope champ, because there weren't that many teams. It was the state was 3A was the top, 2A, and then 1A, and I think one game that pushed us over the hump, the game that we could have very easily lost, was against a 1A school who had won a state championship, I think, in '59, was Paonia, and we lucked out there. We won 20-13, and anyway, that kind of really pushed us over, because we were flying pretty high, and we weren't that tested until it came to Paonia, and also Montrose, who was always our arch rival. Montrose was a tremendously strong team, as they are today, as well as Delta. But Montrose we played them 2 times each year. We had a non-conference game and then a game that counted in the league standings. And although we beat them 3 out of 4 during those 2 years, the one we lost kept us from going on to the state playoffs in '59, and I think we very well could have won that as well. But Montrose, we came up to Montrose right before the championship game. We had to play them. It was a winner-take-all kind of thing, and we edged them 14-12. We got a couple of extra points, and they didn't, so that was the game that got us to the state final, and it was a tough game. But I think those 2 games were very, very instrumental in the success of our season. Now, in those days, we used to play Central, who was always tough. When we played Fruta, who was always tough. The '60 season, we beat Fruta 16-0 down on Fruta, and that was a defensive struggle. Both teams played great defense, and that was quite a game. So that was another interesting game.
And I imagine for you probably really enjoyed this past year, seeing what Ben Johnson and the Delta Panthers were able to do, get to the 2A state championship game. Unfortunately, didn't bring back the hardware like you guys did in 1960, but that had to be a lot of fun to follow that Delta Panthers team this last season.
It was tremendously exciting, and I got to speak with the kids before the state final, and I said, it's something that you will remember until you're an old man like me, because 60 years later, I still remember that very vividly. And it was unfortunate. It was an unfortunate game because of the weather. I wish that Mother Nature would have cooperated, because they were both good teams. Delta was tremendously explosive with their passing game, but with winds that were gusting 35, 40 miles an hour, and it was just a miserable time to play in, although both teams had to conquer the elements. But I think the weather really, really affected that outcome in my mind. But it was a tremendous season for those kids. My granddaughter's boyfriend, played on that team, so I followed him very closely, and it was so exciting to be there. And Coach Ben, he gave this old guy a free pass to go down on the sidelines, and what a treat after all these years to watch Delta in the state final and reminisce and think back. So hats off to them. They had a tremendous season. I'm sorry they came up short.
Well, I'm hoping we have a football season this year, because I get a feeling, Axel, that those Panthers might be back where they ended up their season last year in the 2A title game. Of course, got some tough competition, Rifle in that division as well in that conference, but Delta returns Nolan Bynum and a pretty talented core of guys coming back. Hey, Axel, I appreciate the time. Thank you for taking us down memory lane today with the 1960 Delta Panthers. It's been a real treat having you on. Thank you so much, sir, and best of health to you and yours going forward, and appreciate the time today.
Well, thank you, sir, and God bless.
God bless you as well, sir. Axel Hasto, a longtime educator and the old